started.
2022. What a year.
Absolutely. It's been a blast.
Yeah, and thank you everyone again for joining us. We thought of having like a walk down memory lane for this year. And I essentially I was self-invited because Istvan was going to do it by himself. But then I was like, it's the end of the year. I want to show my face one last time before we close it. So here I am.
Thanks, Shika, for joining. I'm sure that we will make it more lively this way than just one person speaking.
Yeah,
so we are going to get straight into it, right?
Yeah. So I am curious, how many in the audience are BeLazy users? I like the last option. That's why I was laughing.
The first time you see that, right?
Yeah. And for those who are seeing our faces for the first time, or who've never heard about BeLazy, well, BeLazy is a software solution that helps cut the amount of time project managers take to do their monotonous, tedious tasks simply by automating the automatable from the customer to the vendor. So if you want to know more, then we're always a call away.
Yeah.
So who has seen Istvan 2 times a week?
6 people out of 15 have seen me a lot,
including me, because I see you too, like 2 times a week.
That's true. And we already have a hand raised by Alex. I allow him to talk. If you would like to talk, Alex, please do.
Yeah, so chat is blocked, and I feel bad that you're asking questions and there is no way to answer them.
Oh,
that's a very good point. Thank you very much. So I'm actually still curious if that is something that with these 3 that I can resolve from here. It seems that these systems don't want you to spread anything bad about us. And I also have to admit that I need to stop the sharing for a second in order to get back to the participants, and then probably from the participants list, I'm able to do this. Am I? Make host. So I certainly hope that the user experience of BeLazy is better than the user
experience so far.
Attendees can chat with everyone, and panelists can chat with everyone.
Great.
Okay.
So can we get started?
Yeah, Alex, if you can just try again, that would be good. So,
oh, it works. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay.
So this has been a... Yeah, go on.
No. We just wanted to look at our users and see how many were using BeLazy.
And that was like 40%. So
yeah, okay.
That was great. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Let's move on.
Yeah.
So first, I think we should talk about our users, because that is the center of our attention. And while our user base has a couple of other type of customers as well, the vast majority are multilingual and single language vendors. And like, you remember, Shika, that a year ago when you joined, we just lost our first
multilingual vendor. Was it Venga?
It was Venga indeed.
Right? Yeah,
I was heartbroken.
That was quite sad.
And it was also eye-opening.
Yes.
Because we understood after this that the single language vendors and the multilingual vendors are facing different types of problems. And this year, we were very much focusing on the multilingual vendors.
So it was
most of our growth,
basically.
Most of our growth was from there, but there was also some finding, which I think is interesting and important, that it's much less a numbers game than the single language vendors. It's the number of projects that go through for multilingual vendors, maybe because they are mostly bilingual or multilingual, sorry, is much lower than the number of projects that single language vendors receive. And automation has way more topics to address. So this year, we had a lot of new connections to SmartLink, a lot of new connections to MemSource. It was MemSource first, but now it's Phrase, right?
Phrase, yeah.
And one thing that was interesting is that most of the multilingual vendors that are working with BeLazy do not have development teams. And they are the ones that are working with Plunet or XTRF. So Shika, what was the finding with single language vendors?
Yeah, so I think with single language vendors, we always started from a good start, right from the start of the year. Like what I found interesting was that 86% of our opportunities and 81% of our projects came from portals.
That's correct. So the vast majority of what goes through BeLazy is coming from portals.
Yeah. And we also saw like our vLocalized junction integration, it experienced like the biggest jump.
Rocketed.
How many projects was it again? Like four times?
It was 4 times the opportunities of last year. So it was like right now, that's actually our biggest number of projects coming through.
And 5 times.
5 times more in projects.
Yeah. So that was quite a big jump.
And
there was also something about XTRF and Plunet.
Yeah, it's actually surprising that when it comes to connections, originally we thought that those would be the big ones, but super agencies do something right, I believe, because there is way more projects coming through. So altogether, the number of our connections, so if we take all the different types of integrations we have today, the number of connections for XTRF and Plunet together make up 40%. But what's interesting is that from these 40% of the connections, only 10.7% of the opportunities in the system come. And what's even more interesting is that half of this is not accepted. So 5% of the projects that are created created from XTRF and Plunet, and the rest from everything else, obviously. But if I'm looking at it, vLocalize itself is sending more than all of the XTRF and Plunet users together.
True.
And Juancho did have did raise his hand. So if you got to, if you have something to say, just please shoot it. If not, then I definitely
move on. Okay, everything is fine. He said, okay.
Good.
Well, and speaking of growth, we also have like a small little growth in BeLazy, because I remember Istvan always wanted to keep his team small, but this was just a small little addition all the way from South America.
Hey!
Federico Stiefel. Hi,
how are you?
Thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me here. How are you?
Well,
very good.
Yeah.
How is summer?
How is summer? It's what, 40 something.
I think today is 38, 37. I don't know. It's very hot. Thank you very much for having me here. I'm really glad to join the BeLazy team. I don't want to take too much of the webinar's time, so I will be real quick. Just for the audience, I will be helping Ivan, of course, in the business automation. I love working with processes and automations, and since I have a programmer and database administrator's background, I'm really into this. And also on a personal level, I am a Star Wars fan, Tolkien's fan, and I like rollerblades. So if anyone have tips or fun facts about that, I'm glad to receive them.
Cool.
One day we'll see how you're teaching me to rollerblade. I'd love to learn that. But
that would be an interesting thing.
When I visit you, I will teach you. Don't worry. It's really easy.
Lovely. Fede, a very big welcome to
so
the
much.
team. Thank you
Yeah.
for joining. He actually
Thank you.
joined on the 1st of December. And so this is the first public appearance, and we are going to announce your joining later. Lovely.
So what about project management though, since BeLazy is all about project management?
At the speed of lightsaber we go. Like we
Thank
are
you, Fede, for the cue.
absolutely. So one of the topics we wanted to do this year is to make sure that project management is quick, because previously we were taking the projects, polling the different systems. And now what we wanted to do is make sure that we use the best technology in order to do everything instantaneously.
So how was it created?
The first topic was actually the email-based hooks. So how do you know that you've got a new project? When you are working in a portal, you normally get an email notification, right? And what we needed to do is connect to Outlook, and we'll talk about this later. And then whenever an email comes in, you know which connection to synchronize. And this is what we did. We introduced this in January, and this was our solution for what more sophisticated systems do by webhooks. So that was our first way of speeding up things. Mm-hmm. And then, for example, a project comes in from Lionbridge, and immediately it's visible within BeLazy within seconds. And then the auto approval rule is able to evaluate that and create it in your system, in the business management system, whatever.
And what were the benefits of this?
Immediacy. So like the incoming projects are immediately visible. But what was not visible so far is when you made changes, when you delivered, that was not immediate.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Cool. And this was also for memo queue, right? Like we also have something.
So then what we did is that we also started working on the one system that we identified, and this is definitely not like there may be other systems by now that are doing this, but we realized that Phrase, which used to be MemSource back then, had a an interesting way of handling incoming work, because there are two ways to do, like when you're working with a content management integration. One is creating a new project every time there is an update, which is something that we could handle. But we also had customers who were not able to handle the fact that they got a new job, which is basically a new file added into the, back then, MemSource job. And imagine you've got 10,000 projects that you see. Each of them have 10 files. That's 100,000 files. There is no way we can poll every single project. Has there been a change? Has there been a change? Has there been a change? Because that would be just overusing the APIs. But fortunately, the system does have the capability to tell us when there was a change to a project and tell us which project we need to query. And this is what we implemented. And what was amazing is that every time there is a job canceled, every time there is a new job or project added, BeLazy knows immediately that there was a change and can immediately transfer that into the business management system. And this is something that we don't have yet for MemoQ, but we've got the equivalent coming soon.
And so for our next talk, we will mention MemoQ this time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it will be just walking down the memory lane, because we will have that probably in Q1 of the next year.
Mm-hmm.
So
what about XDRF?
What we did here is that it's fine that we get the project into XDRF immediately. But what we don't do is, like, when you assign a translator in XDRF that needs to go back into MemSource, or when you are closing a job in XDRF that should close the job in MemSource, that was not immediate. But fortunately, XDRF also has this technology, and not just XDRF, Plunet also has it, but we just haven't implemented it yet, to notify a third-party system, in our case BeLazy, about changes. And so we learned when we can immediately respond to XDRF. This was only introduced in the last release, which was last Tuesday, but it's working for everybody who is using XDRF at the moment, that every time they add a new they assign a new translator or they close a job, this gets immediately to BeLazy, and within a minute or so, the whole story will go through.
Mhm.
So we also have here an anniversary. While Fede is new to the team, Shika is not. She completed the whole year in BeLazy.
Yes,
And
I got a lot of changes in my hair done. Thank you for highlighting that, Istvan.
well, you highlight your hair, I highlight
I
the
did.
change.
But yeah,
What was interesting is that a year ago, Shika made a promise to me when joining as back then a sales development representative, who she in the meantime became much more involved with the company, and that she would stay for a year. And I think she's here to stay for longer than that. Did you get the bug of the language industry?
yeah, I was just gonna say that I got the language industry bug. Like once you get into the language industry, you just never seem to get out of it.
How was your year?
Well,
What were your main findings?
wow, like if you put me on the spot like that. But so far, I definitely enjoyed working with you, Istvan. So I hope you felt the same with me.
Absolutely. And I think also our friends and customers in the
Yes,
industry have
exactly. Like I met so many nice people. Well, okay, thank you for cutting me off. But what I meant to say was I met so many interesting, so many valuable people who, you know, really enriched my language industry knowledge. And so I really have a lot of people to thank. So yeah.
That's
And
great.
here's to learning more. Here's to
Absolutely.
learning, definitely. Yeah.
And look, while we can pretend that this is the first time we are having this conversation, I think we can just give away the fact that we kind of tried to prepare.
Yeah.
And I know that you learned something about project
Yeah.
managers over the last year.
When I would meet these language industry experts, I would also meet like project managers, operation managers, and I saw that they had this need for control, which is not a bad thing, but they always wanted to know every tool that they were using. So they wanted to get their hands on all of the portals, all of the TMSs, yada, yada, yada. But they also mistook BeLazy to be a portal, to be yet another portal rather. So I don't know, Istvan, have you experienced something like this when you would go and meet people?
Yes, absolutely. In the first half year this year, this was actually the #1 objection to introducing BeLazy. So I definitely know that project managers need to be in control.
Yeah.
And like this is something that in a sales situation you cannot really do anything against. You cannot say like put all your projects through it and like then it will be the only system that you need to use. But we need to deliver this feeling of control somehow. Mm-hmm. And we did 2 major improvements in this area. If you look at the screenshot, which you can see on the right side, I just pasted it there. It's not very nice, not very big, but many of you know that there is approval pending and there is delivery pending. And under the connections, there is the dump. So what happened before January, we had only approvals pending and deliveries pending. And if BeLazy was able to pick up the delivery and deliver back successfully, or unsuccessfully, you got an red flag, but successfully you delivered back into the customer portal, it just disappeared from this list into the heap of the projects that was very hard to manage, which if you look at the connections, it's under the connections. It was always there, but you couldn't really see what happened. So we highlighted the fact that you want to know about the projects that were delivered and created a new line here, delivered within, and you can select 24 hours, 72 hours, 7 days, whatever. And those projects that were delivered automatically by BeLazy appeared here.
Because nobody wants to know what happened in the last year.
Yeah, I mean, it's always like what happened like what today, yesterday. Yeah. It's always that's what's interesting.
Yeah, exactly. But what if they didn't want everything automated? Because everybody loves a human touch to it too.
Oh, yes. That was actually the second big topic, and that was actually a much bigger topic than creating one more area in the user interface, which was monitoring the manual deliveries. We were not even sure if we can do it, but finally we did. Like what happens when you upload the project into the source portal? The status becomes closed. So from in progress, it is done, closed, whatever you call it. And we realized that this is something that we could monitor. Previously, what we did is that we monitored the client systems up to the point you created a project, and after that, we monitored the project in your system. But now what we do is that we monitor that in the client system as well as in your system. So in the client system, we can actually see if you circumvent BeLazy and you deliver manually.
Mm-hmm.
And we can indicate that as well.
Sorry, please go on. I just wanted to ask, like, what is the added value for the clients then?
The added value, I mean, this is like you have a list in your business management system like XTRF, ClueNet, or Protemos, or your own. But what we can add here is an exact timestamp, because the first time we see the project appear in the client's portal closed, we take note of that timestamp. There is a synchronization every 30 minutes maximum, but there can be more frequent synchronization as well. So what this means is that if that timestamp is more than 30 minutes after the deadline, then that project was delivered late. In the business management system, this can be tampered with, this can be changed. It is actually looking at what the project manager enters there. In this system, this is audited. So what you can see exactly is what went in on time and what went in late. So there is only this little 30 minutes, which we are also going to address. That is a bit of a wiggle room that maybe it shows it's late, but it was just lacking a synchronization. Everything else is absolutely reliable.
Cool. And speaking of the clients, we also went for a lot of conferences. So like, I wanted to know, like, how many conferences did you attend? Because I attended like 4.
I think I went to 7 last year.
Wow.
And those were just the conferences. But I was very pleased to go to some of the conferences, like the user conferences were my highlight. Like ClueNet, XTRF, MemoQ Fest. I was there and I enjoyed it very much.
You also spoke in a few conferences.
Yes, definitely. And I think that some of it was a lot of useful information, because it's kind of like we see how project management works from the customers, and then we are able to share some of those things that everybody can take away, like how to structure what they call a task, what they call a project, what they call a job. That was one of the things. The other thing is like why you can think that single language vendors are more similar to freelancers than they are to multilingual vendors. These are all findings that are not obvious. Maybe some of you have it, maybe some of you don't, but I think that there are some insights that we can actually learn from our customers, synthesize that, and it's not only contributing to the product that we have, but also contributes to the state of the world. Yeah,
like even for me, I mean, when I first went in as a new person in the industry, I first thought that the conferences would be very intimidating. But then when I actually went there, the people were so inviting, so warm that, you know, I was like put at ease. And of course, a few drinks also helped on the side, but in the end, everything worked out really well.
And that's actually true.
Yeah, but coming back to our ever favorite, our MLVs, what other growth did we see from here?
So one thing that I didn't know about MLVs earlier was that they like to push the content, just like as if it was a content management system integration, into their tool set, into their translation system. So therefore, they like to work with XLIF. And these two use cases are actually from 2 very large MLVs in the world that we are serving with some integrations. And the first one was phrase. This was the first tool where we learned to export XLIF from phrase. And this is not memsource, this is the phrase, the phrase strings, the old phrase, and to import it back into the system.
And were there like any complications that you faced? Let me guess, yes.
That we phrased, yes, definitely. But the complication was not with phrase. The complication was that when you got a Word file, when you are working with files, you upload that to the source folder, and every language you go into 10 languages is the same source file. But if you are working with XLIF, if you are working with bilingual files, it's a different source file for each language. And we needed to address this in the different systems like XTRF or PluNet or Protemos, putting the source files to the right places, picking up the project from the right, for the target files from the right places. This was a big thing.
So, but why localize?
Localize was also a customer request, and Localize was actually the first development related translation management system that we supported. We were even kindly helped by them already in 2021, actually at the end of 2020. This was way before we had support for phrase and for Transifex, but we didn't have the XLIF component. So we had to build that part as well. And this became the second one. But by that time, fortunately, the bilingual file problem was solved.
Huh. But did we face any, or rather did the MLVs face any other challenges?
Yeah, one of the typical things that we see with MLVs is that there is a customer who works with 2 or more multilingual vendors. And they give access to all the project, but they say like, you MLV1, please take these 5 languages, and you MLV2, please take those 5 languages. So we don't need to import everything into the system. And this is something I was not aware of, because they are not really assigning. It's a bit of a missed, like kind of, it's an instruction to the MLV, but the enterprise could do it, but they are not doing it. That's what happens very often.
But was it easy to work with this kind of workflow? Like, would you recommend it?
With XLIF is definitely, like there is a slider. The way I see that, there is a slider. Because if you want little trouble with the customer, with the formats, with everything, and you go a long way teaching the translators, then you work in the customer system. This is what SLVs do, especially with recurring customers. But in this case, these large MLVs didn't want the hassle to train the translators. So they took on the extra hassle of working with the XLIF files, of exporting, importing, keeping the translation memories in another system as well. And basically, what I'm seeing is that this is creating some of the confusions. So knowing, which file was uploaded, which file was not uploaded, it's not so trivial in the business management systems. And I saw more, issues with the delivery than I normally see with working online.
And speaking of,
yeah,
you went to Global Textware in Holland, was it?
Yes, that was actually one of the highlights of this year. Last year we had a visit. I did a visit at 6 continents, and hi Getan. Thank you very much for letting me do that. And this year it was with Global Textware, and I'm not very good at taking pictures, so this is the only one that I haven't. This is definitely not an office picture, and not with everybody in the team, so sorry about that. But what I found is that shadowing is the best way to learn. So you can have a conversation with the company owners. It's not super useful, honestly. What is super useful is to sit behind the project managers, and if they do something that I don't understand why they do, ask why they do that.
So basically,
and every copy paste matters.
Yeah. No, I was just adding to you, like basically get your hands dirty.
Absolutely, because that's where we learn the most.
Yeah. Well, shout out to Global Textware.
Hey, thank you.
And 6 continents from last year.
As well. You taught us a lot.
And speaking of MLVs yet again, we had another, let's say, elephant in the room regarding smart link.
Absolutely. And regarding not only SmartLink, but also the review pricing. When SmartLink was an interesting system, and you can see the variety of the different challenges we have. Because SmartLink was a very interesting system because they have the review workflow on a segment basis, whereas most of the review workflows are on document or a larger scale basis. And the point is that taking out the right analysis for what goes for review is already a challenge. But what's more important here, because that's just the source connector, it can be solved. What's more important here is to see that the TEP, translation, editing, proofreading, pricing, is not very much compliant with the pricing for the review these days in online tools. Because if you look at that, what's the idea? You get paid 30%, let's say, for a 100% match. You get paid full price for a new, new words. And then you get paid different percentages for different types of matches from the translation memory. And the translation memory does help the translator, that's no question. But the translation memory does not help the reviewer. Reviewing a segment that came from the translation memory is the same amount of time as reviewing a brand new segment. So because of this, there is a need for a review pricing. And you could say, let's do it on the total words. But that's also not true, because there are locked segments, there are context matches that you simply don't have to review. And that calls for another CAD grid for review than the CAD grid that you are using for translation. And if you remember that, Shika, this with several customers this year, we had this conversation that they had like a really hard time getting the review pricing into the system, right?
Yeah, I remember.
It went with us over the year, and we were trying to how to solve this, because we are one abstract, we are an abstractor, if you like. We are trying to solve everything the same way and find a solution that works for everyone. But we were thinking a lot how to solve this in our supported systems, Plunet, XTRF, Protemos, and we didn't find a way. And that's terrible, because we needed to learn that there was no common way. So out of all of these systems, from an automated way with price lists, only Plunet was able to solve this, because there the price lists are freely combinable. But it's a reasonably complicated setup to tie the CAD grid to the actual price line, and the price lines are tied to the actual workflow job, and then you've got the price list as well. So like getting this whole thing together is relatively a complicated like a puzzle.
It does sound complicated. Although there was something. Sorry, did I interrupt you?
No, you did not.
I was saying, although there was something less complicated.
Yeah, I mean, XTRF was less complicated, but XTRF is restrictive. So what you can do automatically there is have in one price profile, one set of percentages, which is enough for translation, but not enough for review. So XTRF's system can solve it because manually you are able to override this, but it cannot solve it in an automated way. So what we needed to do is develop basically the CAD grid storage, and like one CAD grid is coming from XTRF and every other can come from BeLazy directly, and then we can solve it, of course. And then let's get to the third one, which was Protemos, where Protemos had the concept of CAD grids, had the concept of receivables. Through BeLazy's interface, we could even match them correctly. So that was actually the first one that we finished. But what was interesting is the payables, because we apply the same thing to the payables. But what happens is that before the vendor selection, you create payables. And XTRF and Plunet update the price here. But Protemos did not update the price. There was no recalculation. You selected the translator and it remained on the same price as before, regardless of whether that translator charged 2 cents or 20 for a word. So what we had to do is run like a scheduled job, which is doing this recalculation for you. So again, not only for XTRF, also for Protemos, it seems that we are adding some value by doing things in an automated way outside of that system that favors that system.
That was quite a journey, though. But speaking of something that was not so complicated, hopefully, was our email assistant. I think we have a lot of users for the email assistant now.
It's becoming popular. We started with like there was this workspace API that had 2 users in July, even though we had it for almost 2 years. And now it's got like 53 or something.
That's quite a big jump. Although I am curious though, how did you get the idea for this? Like what made you want to start something like this?
It was the visit. It was the visit to 6 continents, where I sat behind their lovely Amélie, who I saw that she was working a lot with emails. So she was doing a lot of things in BeLazy and not a lot in the portals, but with emails she was working a lot.
Because
and then I got the idea that this is an important source of information that we cannot ignore. And interestingly, none of the business management systems, none of the major business management systems have support for this. So why don't we support it?
Nice. And I also I really like how the email assistant basically creates projects in your own business management system from the content of the email. So like the sole purpose of the email assistant is to basically cut the amount of time it takes to create projects from minutes to just seconds.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because you know, like you see a little email and you know how you would set it up, which is the same thing as a connection, nothing else. Mm-hmm. So we actually had to look into this and look into the categorizing of emails first, because you get emails. Some of these emails contain orders. Some of them don't contain orders, so you don't want to create it.
Right.
We needed to introduce artificial intelligence, machine learning here, which is a self-learning machine learning. And I think we are one of the relatively few companies in the industry that do machine learning outside of the machine translation space. Mm-hmm. So what we needed to do is a categorization automation. The other thing that we also saw is that there are some emails that are coming from automated systems, and they are template-based. If an email is template-based, then you are able to automatically carve out the contents, and it's reliable. But when it's a free text email, then you can take out things using entity recognition, using deadline recognition, certain patterns, but still a human needs to check that. So what we need to do is cut back the time to seconds, and then enter the pre-filled templates, which I think is super interesting. That pre-filled templates are basically trying to grasp your agreements with the customers. You've got a customer. This customer is always ordering from you English into French and English into German. And then you don't even have to look for it in the email. So it's implicit information. And this is what the pre-filled templates can put into this form. So you've got a form that you need to fill in, and the form becomes pre-filled based on who is sending it. Other parts are coming from the email, and the rules on how to set it up in your business management system is through a connection rule set. So all of this is actually shrinking the time from several minutes into, let's say, 10 to 20 seconds to create a new project.
Yeah.
And what was also super interesting is that this is like we saw a lot of new interest. Companies that did not work with vendor portals and translation management systems became immediately interested. So that was also something new here. And now the side products.
Yeah, I was going to ask that, like, what happened to the sides? Do we have something to serve the main course?
Yeah, the main
That
course
joke
was the
didn't
email
land.
assist-
It's okay. That joke didn't land. I wanted to land, but it didn't.
No, it's fine. I think that the most interesting thing was that we learned that a project as big as the email assistant is prone to fail if you don't dedicate resources. So this actually changed also our way of developing software, and I think for the better. Because even though we are a small company, we do work with 2 development teams, not one. One is called BeLazy Core. Their goal is to make this system stable and good and performant, and to offer the possibilities to connect new innovations into that. And then there was the innovation team, which is actually developing the email assistant, and now it's developing a little something. And basically the idea was that this was independently developed, and these people did not have to serve customers. They just had to work on something completely new. And why? Because we saw that their other team, like as we had one team before, didn't make progress on the email assistant. It was super slow. The other thing is that the BeLazy core was actually the test bed for our vendor portal API that existed earlier. But we needed to make it great, because what the email assistant does is that it uses the vendor portal APIs to create projects in Plunet, XTRF, and in BeLazy, which in turn creates the projects in the business management system. And this is now pretty solid, with all the custom data being managed correctly, with everything there, returning the files in the end. So if somebody wants to build a content management system integration into a Plunet or an XTRF or a Protemos or their own system, this is the right approach to take, because you can define everything about the project, you can upload the files, and then you get the right project created with the right connections, with right everything, nothing to program. And this is, for example, one area where we already are working with enterprises, because some enterprises are using these systems and they found it immensely hard to connect Plunet or XTRF into their CMSs. And with this vendor portal API, it is a breeze. It's really a matter of a day or 2 or 3. And that's all. And like, finally, I would also mention here, I love the innovation capability of our users. I don't think Nenad from Translation Age is here, but he was the first person that actually implemented something. I mean, not him, but his developers that implemented something that we were just dreaming about in BeLazy. So this was showing the core, the BeLazy core strength, that innovation is not necessarily within the company. It can also come from outside of the company. So what he did is that he actually implemented a connection where their system is creating a project in BeLazy for other vendors. And so it's an outsourcing connection with auto acceptance, which is automatically creating the projects. The other vendors are also BeLazy users. So even though they are not, I don't know, Lionbridge or VLocalize or RWS, they are able to have the same sophistication when it comes to automated project management as those that have the portals that we have created. So I really love this. And kudos to him.
Well, shout out to Nenad too, but unfortunately he's not here. We're just
Yeah, he will have to watch the recording.
You have to watch the recording, yes.
Because we speak so positively about him. So, but I love working with users like these. It's amazing.
Yeah. And our connectors. Special mention. Yeah. Go on.
Okay. So there are a couple of changes this year. So we implemented a SIMLite connector, which was RWS Moravia, back then it used to be called, Moravia's vendor portal for one of the blue chip companies' jobs. I don't think I'm allowed to say it, but it was used for one of the largest translation customer only. and then it got deprecated this year. So they stopped using it. So it went. And we added a new portal, which is actually coming live next week, which is the new portal for Transline, T-Blue. If you remember, we used to have a Transact integration. As a matter of fact, that was our first one, because when we entered business, there were only two companies that offered an API. One was Transline, and the other one was BeLazy. What is funny is that BeLazy offered this API for Falcon. Sorry, three. There was also Moravia Symphony.
Okay. Yeah.
They still keep on using that.
Yeah.
So there was this Falcon API, and then BeLazy moved into Junction, which was their new system. And all of a sudden, that did not have an API. And our integration was used as the API for that system. And actually, in the end, they released an API which is available for all the vendors, and it's very similar to our integration. And I expect that something similar is going to happen with Transline and T-Blue, because we abstracted it away, so it's now working. I actually tested it today, and they also don't have an API, and they used to have an API, so we are able to offer this API.
Yeah, and I also like that we have 3 new developments related to our TMSs. So
Yeah.
I think, no, I was just gonna say, I think this year in January, we had Phrase and Transifex that was released. And I wanted to have this as a suspense too, but now it's already written here. But in January, we have Crowdin as our next release.
Yeah, so we wanted to cover the main systems for the development-oriented localization. As I mentioned, Localize was the first one, but then we also had the support for Phrase and Transifex. I think at our Transifex one, we didn't talk about the challenges. There were many challenges there because it's a very different type of system which does not work with tasks or jobs. So we need to create the tasks and jobs. But in reality, what Phrase and Crowdin and Localize does with this is what we do, like the extra layer we offer in Transifex. So there is no homogeneity in this industry, I believe. And that is something that's making things a little complicated for us. But I still believe that it's achievable to kind of homogenize, which is our mission here.
Yeah, and I also see a pattern now that every January we're releasing something. So Istvan, every January we have to release something new, I guess.
Exactly. we do. It's Christmas is over.
We get it.
Maybe
Yeah.
Los Reyes are in January.
So the pattern has been set now.
Yeah. And maybe you can mention a little bit about the little something, but instead of mentioning it, what I think we should be doing is this. A little poll to end this presentation.
I think we have a little something coming for next year. But we want to know from the audience. We already want to know some of your secrets, basically. I love that there's this silence.
Yeah, because it's like the votes are coming in.
The art of waiting.
Come on, we only have one slide left, which is questions.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So the art of waiting, also, we need to know when to stop this. And, when nobody was giving a new answer for the last 15 seconds, you better stop it. Here you see the results. Thank you very much to all of you who have participated in this poll.
So, and we should have actually mentioned it could be HubSpot, Pipedrive, whatever, in case.
I should have, but I did not. Sorry.
We should have. Even I was at fault here. So.
Yeah. So CRM is customer relationship management, but I suppose that the majority of you would know.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So cool. Thanks so much for this. And let's open the floor. Hey, I didn't know that this was animated. This is so cool.
Yeah. Guys, we did see the presentation before.
So Alex wanted to learn about the content API. I'm wondering if you learned enough. Let us know. And you know, we also appreciate if anybody wants to say something. We can open the microphone and also the camera, and you can come on board.
Yeah. Some insights, some compliments would be really appreciated. Alex, I think
Okay.
raising his hand again.
Yeah, so there is no way to enable camera. But
Oh, wow.
so thank you so much for the webinar about the content API. It's very promising. At Localize, we have dozens, and I know how hard it is to maintain, and that before most small companies were out of luck to compete on number of connectors with different content management systems. But if you can empower smaller language companies to compete with Behemoth, it will be extremely interesting to see how it will change the industry. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you very much, Alex. Very, very nice comment. Appreciate that. And yeah, I certainly hope that we are leveling the playing field a bit, because what's also important is that without the playing field being leveled, the supply chain will not see the improvements that the end customers want.
Mm-hmm. Right. Do we have any more questions from the audience? Or any comments or
I don't see anything.
any suggestions also?
Yeah, if there is something you definitely want to see or hear or anything else, then let me know.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well then.
Then I'd like to thank you. Thanks, Shika.
Always
Thank
a
Pele.
pleasure. Yes. And thank you,
Getan.
and thank everybody for joining. Istvan, it's always a pleasure.
Likewise. And then this is the time when we have to say happy holiday, right?
Yes.
We will not see each other.
Happy holidays and Merry Christmas. And see you next year in the new year.
Next year.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And if you've got any questions in the meantime, then just reach out to us. Like if you are interested in the new release a little more, the release notes are up there. Like anything you want, we'll be here. Take care for now.
Okay. Ciao, ciao.
Bye-bye.